Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, GP Tips, Tricks, and Treats Bank Reconciliation. I'm Megan Turco, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we jump in, I'm going to briefly go over how to use our webinar console. The orange arrow on the right side of your screen will let you toggle the control tray open or closed. And at the bottom of that control tray, you'll see a chat window. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time throughout the webinar via the chat function, and we will get to those towards the end during our Q&A session. Additionally, on your GoToWebinar Console, you should see an area for audio settings. If you're calling in through your telephone, please choose the Use Telephone option. And alternatively, if you're using your computer speakers, please select the Use Mic and Speakers option. Additionally, I do want to note that today's webinar is being recorded. We will send out the slides as well as a link to the on-demand recording of the webinar within about 48 hours. So definitely keep an eye out for that message if you're interested in watching today's webinar after today or sharing it with any colleagues who couldn't make it with us live. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's featured webinar speakers. We have Megan Fall, who is a senior consultant on Armanino's GP team. Megan has over 7 years of experience implementing and supporting GP. She's a Microsoft certified professional in GP financials, supply chain, and implementation with extensive experience in management reporter and integration manager. We also have Seher Ahmed with us today, who's also a senior consultant on our GP practice team here at Armanino. Seher has 4 years of experience supporting and implementing Microsoft GP and is a certified professional as well, Microsoft certified professional as well, in GP financials, inventory, and order processing. It's great to have you both with us today, and with that, I will pass it over to Megan to get us started.
Hi, and welcome to everybody who's joined us. Today's presentation, we're going to go over how transactions in the bank module, how other modules transactions affect the bank and the GL module, so how that flows together. Then we're going to go through the reconcile bank statement process, and we're going to cover the use of the reconcile to GL tool specifically for banking. We'll go through that again in a demo, and then we'll handle any questions at the end. So just to give you guys an overview of how transactions flow from subledgers into the GL and the bank. So from this diagram, you can see the subledgers we're talking about are payroll, AP, AR. When you post transactions there, like cash receipts, let's say, they have a cash account selected. They also have a checkbook selected on the batch. So the checkbook tells it to go to the bank module and which checkbook there will be selected. And then the cash account from the distributions tells it how to hit the general ledger. So the posting hits both modules, the bank and the GL, at the same time. Now, transactions that are made in the bank module flow directly to the general ledger. You'll notice that there are no arrows that go from the general ledger back to the bank or back to any subledger. So that indicates the truth, which is that GL does not hit the bank. So you can't put in a journal entry for a cash account and expect it to hit the bank. It would only show up in the general ledger. From that, I'll give it over to Seher, who's going to talk you through the transaction types in bank.
So I'll be going over the different transaction types available in the banking module. The first one is bank deposits, which is located under transaction, financial, bank deposit. One of the options that is available is deposit with receipt. When deposit with receipt is selected, all of the selected checkbooks receipts that are available for the deposit appear in this window. Receipts entered in other modules such as the AR cash receipts and AP returns. Now, the checkbook balance is updated by the deposit amount when you do post. However, the GL isn't updated because the cash account was updated when the receipt was posted in the other modules. So that is when the option type is deposit with receipt. Now, if you select deposit without receipt, this enters a transaction to the bank only and has no associated GL or subledger posting. So this means that sometimes some of the customers, if they don't have a receipt and they just need to do a correction, they'll sometimes do a deposit without receipt. Or if they're in a hurry and just want to do something on the fly, even though the receipts are available, they'll sometimes do that deposit without receipt so they could do a mass transaction. Now with this, there's another option available, which is the clear unused receipts. So say you don't want to assign those individual receipts to a deposit, you can remove the receipts by entering a deposit to clear the receipts transaction. This type doesn't update the cash account or the bank account. Its sole purpose, again, is to remove view of a receipt. You will never attach to a deposit with the receipt. So again, it's something that some customers use on the fly. And that is a couple of options that is available for the bank deposit entry. Here in this window, you would put in a deposit date. The deposit number will automatically update. You'll also enter your checkbook ID, the currency, and then the deposit amount. If there are receipts available within the range, they will be listed below. So the next transaction type is bank transactions, which is located under transaction, financials, bank transaction. There's multiple options available. One is the enter transaction or the void transaction. The transaction types here are check, withdrawal, increase adjustment, or decrease adjustment. This option is also available during the reconcile to bank statement process. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention is that the bank transaction screen doesn't have a batch. So what happens is anything that's listed here, say if you even import a batch, it'll directly post to the GL. It won't stop at any point. But if you want to turn it off to post to the GL and not through to the GL, you can definitely follow up with us and we can point you in the right direction on how to turn that function off. Normally it's post all the way through, but again, you can turn it off so that it doesn't affect the GL. The next option is the bank transfers. So this is used when transferring funds from one cash account to another, and it updates both the checkbooks and the GL. So for example, you might want to transfer funds from your general checkbook account to your payroll checkbook account, and you might want to do this maybe just before the payday. What happens is if you use the bank transfer window, it'll affect both of the bank subledgers and will also update both the checkbook balances and associated cash account balances. Sometimes what happens is some users think that they can use the bank transaction feature, which is a no-no. This is because only one of the checkbooks will be properly updating in the checkbook module. And the reason is that the bank transaction window in the module only calls out one checkbook name, so it doesn't call out that second one. So this transfer, again, is important if you're doing a transfer from one checkbook to another, because, again, it will update both the cash account and the bank checkbook. The reconcile to bank statement. It's important to reconcile your bank statement with accounts in GP to identify and resolve discrepancies between GP and your bank statement. This is located under Transactions, Financial, Reconcile Bank Statement. In this window, you would enter the checkbook ID. It will default the description and the currency ID. You would also enter the bank statement ending balance, the bank statement ending date, and that's the date right from your bank statement, and then the cutoff date. And what the cutoff date is that it's transactions with dates on or before the date that appear in that scrolling window under Select Bank Transactions. If you leave this field blank, what happens is all the transactions for this checkbook that haven't been reconciled or voided will appear in the window even after your bank statement ending date. So if you leave that cutoff date empty, it'll pull in things, any transactions after that bank statement date. However, if you restrict the date, anything before, say, April 30th, which is in our screenshot, will show in that cutoff date. So also, once you click on that transactions button, you'll see all of your transactions appear. You'll see your deposits and checks. What you do here is you click off to clear, and you will be tying both your bank statement against GP. Now, the important thing here is to get the balance down to 0, and that's under that difference section at the very bottom. If your balance isn't down to 0, your reconcile will not be completed. There's an adjustments button below which you can go ahead and click and manually go ahead and enter in adjustment at that time. But the problem here is that when you're adding an adjustment, sometimes since there's no background detail to it, Megan will be going over some of the other tools that are available to figure out why there is a difference between your bank statement and GP.
Okay, so that brings us to the Reconcile to GL tool. This is a tool. It is not a reconciling report. Its use is primarily just to find the discrepancies. So when you have that difference on your bank rec, main page bank rec, you want to go find out exactly why you're seeing that difference. So this Reconcile to GL tool for bank statements or for bank reconciliation should help you find those differences. So the tool is located, if you go to the GP menu under Tools, Routines, Financial, Reconcile to GL. So that should be another hint. It's not under Reports, it's under Routines. Once you've opened it up, you're going to give it a reconciling date. Generally, it takes today's date. You're going to tell it which, you're going to select the module, which is going to be either, it'll be a drop-down menu and it'll have things like receivables, payables, and you select bank reconciliation. It's grayed out here because we've already selected it. And then you're going to tell it which checkbook ID you want to reconcile for. And that is going to, if you've already set this up, it would tell you which accounts, which you can see on the right-hand side, are listed for that checkbook. Now, generally speaking, you're going to have a one-to-one relationship between checkbook ID and account. There shouldn't really be two account numbers for a bank ID. This is just for demo purposes, so we have some little interesting bits of data every so often. The next thing that you have to do before you can process is set the output file location. It's going to produce this tool into an Excel form, so you need to tell it where to go to place that file. Generally, we would tell you to put it on a shared location so that whoever needs it can reach it. Then once you run the reconciliation at least once, it will fill out the subledger, general ledger, and difference fields at the bottom. You'll see the beginning and the ending balances, and that way you can compare on the fly rather than having to rerun the whole thing over again. And so here is an example of what you would see when you run the Reconcile to GL tool. The balances on the spreadsheets are matched or unmatched or potentially matched. So the ones that you want to look at in terms of finding your discrepancies are the unmatched and potentially matched. In this case, we see 4 transactions that are unmatched. That means, and you'll also notice that the GL transactions are on, looks like, yeah, the GL transactions are on the right-hand side and the bank or subledger transactions are on the left-hand side. So it looks like in this particular instance, we had 4 transactions that hit the general ledger that never went through the bank. Now, a lot of times the unmatched transactions are unmatched due to date. If your posting date and your document date are different, then it just can potentially not fall within the right time frame of your so like if it would be outside of 4:30, if it was, let's say, 5/1, but you backdated it, so maybe the subledger hits within the 4:30, but the posting date is still 5/1, it would not show up on the tool, and it would also not show up in your reconcile, and that would indicate that your discrepancy is based on a date problem. Another common thing, especially with bank rec, is because you're coming from a subledger and it's passing through bank into the GL, sometimes the checkbook ID can be changed. So you might have a default. In this case, let's say it's First Bank is your default, but for some reason this time your cash receipts were posted to Uptown Trust checkbook. So the set of transactions that were in that batch would have gone to the wrong account number, or sorry, the wrong checkbook number, and so that could again show up as a problem on your bank rec and potentially in your Reconcile to GL tool. The last thing too is, remember we said that the GL looks at the cash distribution account. It doesn't care about the checkbook. The bank module looks at the checkbook and doesn't care about the cash account that's used in the distribution. So again, if you have a batch that's assigned checkbook First Bank, which is account number 000-1100, but you go in into one transaction and change the cash account to 000-1200, then the GL cash account is not going to match to the bank checkbook. And then that would cause a discrepancy, and that would cause also an unmatched transaction and a bank rec issue as well. So there's a few different things that can come up, and you would see most of these in the Reconcile to GL tool. Okay, so if you need to reprint your bank reconciliation report, when you run your bank rec, it's going to produce a report. If something happens and you either can't grab that report at the time it's posted, or you just need to reprint for any reason, here's where you would go to find the bank posting journals. There are 4 different types of journals. They're all available if you go to Reports, Financial, Bank Posting Journals. There's a drop-down menu there where you can select which journal you want. The one that we get asked about a lot is the Cleared Transaction Journal. That one just seems to come up more often than some of the others, but they are all available and can all be reprinted from that location. All right, and now I'll turn it back over to Seher, who'll go through our demo.
Okay, so moving on to our demo, first thing we're going to go over is the Reconcile to Bank statement, which is located under Transactions, Financial, Reconcile Bank Statement. Here we're going to go ahead and select our checkbook ID. So for our demo, we'll choose Uptown Trust. As you can see, it defaults to description and the currency ID. The bank statement ending balance is the one that we get from, we actually go ahead and enter that from the bank statement. The problem here is that it looks like we already have a Reconcile to Bank statement already started and saved. That's one good thing that I forgot to mention, is that sometimes if you have multiple transactions that have to be reconciled, you can start a bank statement, reconcile, save it, and then come back to it and continuously clear off those transactions. So if we start a new one, it won't have that bank statement ending balance. You're going to go ahead and enter that balance. So here in that example, we have $300, and then our bank statement ending date is April 30th. For our cutoff date, we went ahead and entered 0 because we want to see all transactions. If you want to go ahead and enter a cutoff date, say for the 30th of April, anything beyond the 30th will not show under transactions. Everything before that will show. So if we go to transactions, we will get this update, which is, are you sure you want to match deposits by amount within the 8-day grace period? I'll go ahead and select yes. And we have all of our transactions listed here. So here we have our deposits, we have checks. You will also see some voids listed in this window, and what you want to do is actually click off to clear. As you can see these dates, there's some transactions from 2014 that haven't been reconciled, and this will be the case if you don't do your monthly reconciliation. Sometimes there's stuff left behind that might just stay there. This creates a problem when trying to do the reconcile because you want that difference to come down to 0. If it comes down to 0, you can go ahead and move forward with reconciling. So once these are clicked off and cleared, you can go ahead and click on that reconcile button if it is a 0. Now, to help with the amount of transactions that do appear here, you can go ahead and update a range. You can sort by type or date. Another thing is that if that difference isn't 0, there's an adjustments button right here below. If I click on that adjustments button, it'll take me to this window where I can go ahead and enter an adjustment on the fly. Now, like I mentioned before, you can go ahead and save a Reconcile to Bank statement if you have multiple transactions coming in and you want to do this by week instead of month. You can start one and go ahead and start clicking off. Now, the thing is that if you have a problem where the difference is not 0, then you can go ahead and troubleshoot by using the Reconcile to GL tool, which is located under Routines, Financial, Reconcile to GL. Now again, this tool is just for reconciling purposes. You wouldn't use this tool for anything else. And it's just to troubleshoot. So you only want to go ahead and look at the unmatched and potentially matched. This reconciliation number is going to default. Looks like we did 6 in this demo environment. The reconciliation date is also going to default on your current date. So today's date we just have listed as April 12th. Then you're going to go ahead and enter your date range. For your date range, you will go ahead and enter either, let's try April. So we'll do April 1st through April 30th. And we'll update this module to be bank reconciliation. So as you can see, there are multiple modules available in this Reconcile to GL tool. We're only going to be focusing on the bank reconciliation, which is new to 2013 and 2015. I'm going to go ahead and select the checkbook ID. So here I want Uptown Trust. And then under output file, you want to go ahead and actually select the path of where that that Excel spreadsheet is going to save to. As you can see, the account also defaulted right when we selected our checkbook ID for Uptown Trust. So once everything is filled out, I'll go ahead and click Process. And the good thing about this window is it'll also give you kind of like a snapshot down below of the difference between your subledger and your GL. The detail will be in your actual spreadsheet, but that's nice that they do show you right there. So you want to go ahead and ignore anything such as the beginning balance up at the top. You also want to go ahead and ignore anything at the very bottom as far as the total beginning balance is here. You also want to avoid the matched transaction. This is a full match between the subledger and the GL. So these are okay. What you want to focus on is the unmatched section and the potentially matched section. So in this one, we don't have anything under potentially matched, but in our unmatched, you can see that we have transactions that hit the bank module, but that didn't hit the GL. And same here, we have transactions that hit the GL but didn't hit the bank module. And just as Megan had mentioned before, sometimes there's a date issue that can occur or the incorrect checkbook was selected. In our demo environment, for example, we have multiple checkbooks that have the same cash account. Now, we don't recommend that happening at all, but it does create an issue when you are trying to do a reconciliation. So even though the checkbook is incorrect, but the accounts are correct, it does create a reconciliation issue. So you may want to make sure that you selected the correct checkbook when doing that initial transaction. So again, if anything's located here on the left-hand side, which is our subledger, that means that nothing went over to the GL, so we know where to look exactly. Sometimes we might have the transaction sitting in the financials module. You might have a system generated batch that starts with a CM, and that is a default from GP. So you want to look for those kind of batches in financials. If you come across something like that, that will give you more information that the batch didn't go all the way through to the GL. Here for the general ledger, you can see again that there are transactions here, but there aren't any transactions on the banking side. Now for this, there is a fix to go ahead and go into the settings for the GL posting and actually update that so that you're posting through to the banking side, but not posting through to the GL. What will happen is a batch will be created from GP on the financial side awaiting for you to post it. You can go ahead and delete that batch at that point, and what it'll do is it'll update the subledger, the banking side, and not update the GL. If you do want to know more information about that setting, you can go ahead and give us a call or an email and we can go ahead and update you on that process. Another thing that I do want to mention is that if you have multiple transactions coming in per month, and to be more efficient in GP, you do have the option to do an electronic bank reconciliation. And to do that, if you just contact us, we can provide you with more information on how to get that set up. And that concludes our demo.
So it looks like we do have a few minutes left for questions, and we do have a couple questions that have come in. Definitely feel free to submit additional questions if you would like to, but we'll go ahead and get started with this first one here. Megan and Sahar, is there a way to upload a file into GP that contains checks cashed in a specific time period?
That does sound an awful lot like an electronic bank rec, which GP does do. So I'm going to kind of make an assumption that the question is referring to a way to upload a list of checks that have been cashed and therefore do not need to be entered. So these are not entering checks, these are to be cleared. And yes, so electronic bank rec, we could, if you would like to, you can email us and we can look into helping you get that set up. You do have to coordinate with banks a little bit to get that set up and finalized.
Thank you, Megan. Our next question is, what is the grace period message that pops up when you run bank rec? What does that mean?
So if you're using, say, EFT for payables, the 8-day grace period is coming from the EFT payable setup, which includes any transactions for pre-notes that have been generated. If you want to change the grace period during the checkbook reconciliation process, you can go ahead and select no and then update the number right in that window. The impact is the number of EFT generated transactions to include or exclude from the reconciliation.
Our next question here is there any reason I would want to have more than one checkbook for the same cash account?
Okay, so that was because of our demo. We had two checkbooks that reference the same cash account. Normally, no, you wouldn't really want to do that. We do it for demo purposes because we want to show how things can potentially break as well as how things work. So that was why we had that set up. But normally, no. If you have a particular reason you think you might want to have two checkbooks with the same cash account, we could discuss the feasibility of it. But in general, no.
Thank you, Megan. So it looks like we did get a few other requests for some contact and some comments in there, but we are just about out of time, or running about out of time. So I'm actually going to let Megan and Sahar answer any of the additional questions offline. So that if any of your questions came in and we didn't get to them today, they will definitely be able to contact you or someone else on the team, and we can definitely work on that. But that does wrap up our Q&A session for today. So thank you, Megan and Sahar, for your content and that great demo today. And for our audience, as you exit, there will be a quick survey. Please definitely take a moment to let us know your thoughts on today's webinar. And thank you, everyone.